And I strained my shoulder and I couldn't do any freestyle in the build up to the '04 Olympics. And my first races were the 200 freestyle, and having been the Pan Am champion the year before, I couldn't repeat the performance. And I washed out in the semifinals and was unable to produce a best time, despite what felt like working 150% harder. You know, my body was not as strong as it had been, so I knew my mind, I had to really steel my mind. Then in the 100 freestyle, I was in the semifinals again, but unable to progress to the finals. And my injury was just really hurting my confidence. And then we came into the IM, and I knew I had the fight of my life ahead of me. And it's funny how, as you kind of progress in this, the big days, instead of coming on your best days, they come on your worst days. It's like playing the game on level expert. And it has to be that way, otherwise you won't continue to grow. It will just get too easy. And in the heats, I cruised the heats. In the semifinals, my coach, Anil Roberts, had a brilliant strategy. We knew we had to beat László Cseh. And I was next to him in the semifinal. And our plan was to swim with him all the way and then purposely slow down at the end and give him a false sense of dominating me and beating me. And I did that. I remember at 175, just literally slowing down and looking across the pool to make sure I would come second.
Oh, wow.
And then in the finals, this was my 7th race of the Olympics in a very few, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. My body was exhausted. My shoulder was getting worse. My freestyle was weaker than it was usually. My freestyle was like my strongest stroke in the IM. And I knew I had the fight of my life ahead of me. And a good friend of mine from the Bahamas, Jeremy Knowles, in the ready room, he came and met me before the ready room, and he brought a marker and he drew on my bicep a Thor's hammer with lightning bolts. My nickname in the Auburn team was the Hammer of Justice. And the Hammer of Justice had to do with when you're racing someone in a set or a long distance event or a difficult set, and you're exhausted and they're exhausted. But you know that they're exhausted too. And you speed up to a level that is just unsustainable, just as to make them give up. And then you keep speeding up, knowing that you can't swim more than maybe a 25 or a maximum of 50 more at this pace. And then eventually they start to think, oh man, George is very fresh over there. You know, he's just speeding up and I'm getting more tired. I'm just going to give up. And then when they give up and drop back, then you've opened up this window and then you can slow down the pace. And that was called dropping the hammer of justice on somebody. So they would call me the Hammer of Justice. It was on like the championship posters and everything. And when I was feeling pretty weak, pretty down, Jeremy came and drew that on my bicep and reminded me who I was, and it really fired me up. And in the race, you know, every challenge, Brett, every challenge, the real test in the challenge is the moment of weakness. Every challenge comes with the moment of weakness. And in the moment of weakness is the perfect excuse. It's perfect. It is a reason. And you would be okay with yourself if you accept that excuse that seems like a reason. And at the end of the backstroke, I felt weaker than I usually felt. I felt more out of breath than I usually felt at that point in time. And I had the perfect excuse to slow down. It was the injury, it was the exhaustion. I would have been okay with myself if I accepted that excuse.
Yeah.
And by the grace of God, you know, I was able to hold my mind strong and push through that. And there was maybe a 50 or 20 meters there where I was really tempted with taking that excuse. And I resisted the temptation. And then when that passed, my inner strength started to come back to me, and I was able to push through and had the fastest breaststroke split. I think only Kitajima had a faster third 50 breaststroke. And I was able to come home. And László was next to me, and having seen me just drop back in the semifinals, and not dropping back, he started to wonder what's wrong. Why isn't George dropping back? And I think he started to rush his strokes, and put a lot of pressure on him. And then something very interesting happened. We touched the wall, and there was Phelps celebrating, and I was confused, and I was looking at the scoreboard, and then later on, Lochte and everyone started celebrating, and my mother has on video camera of the scoreboard switching Lochte and my position. So,
so it was a mistake on the scoreboard.
Maybe many people say that, you know, TV ratings are involved, and it looks really good for American soft power being projected into the world to have a 1-2. So we don't know. We never know these things. And